Thank you, Stelios, for the great introduction. So, hi everyone, my name is Matthew Griffin. I'm the CEO and founder of the 311 Institute, the World Futures Forum, and Exponential University. Yes, I am a serial entrepreneur. Yes, I like pain. Now, the 311 Institute works with the vast majority of the world's governments, royalty, and the Fortune 250, as well as many other organizations to help them envision, build, and lead the future, but also the deep future up to 50 years out. Now, the World Futures Forum is a philanthropic organization where we, together with partner organizations like the United Nations, work together to try to solve some of the world's greatest challenges. And then Exponential University basically is my first university. And the reason basically why I've built a university is because when we start talking about the future, frankly, our industrial age education systems are not preparing us anywhere near as much as they need to. So in that endeavor, it's taken us over 3 years now to start moving the dial on how we teach hundreds of thousands, millions of students around the world to be future-proof and future-ready. Now, in this particular presentation, I'm going to be walking you through what I call exponential entrepreneurship in the age of sci-fi startups. And you will see why I've chosen that title in a little while. Now, first of all, I'm going to give you what every single entrepreneur doesn't want. I'm going to be giving you free advice because let's face it, every single entrepreneur would much rather have free money. However, I have 3 books here for you that you can all download. So the first one is How to Build Exponential Enterprises. Now, when we have a look at the way that organizations identify problems, build products, and launch products into the market, we live in science fiction-like times where you can identify a problem, you can launch it into the market, and you can have it change an entire global market faster than at any other point in human history, even within a day. And there are plenty of examples of that, but that's a different conversation. Then I have my Future Technology Codex, which covers over 270 exponential technologies, what they are, why they are, how you can use them to do stuff. And then I have my Trends Codex, which covers over 200 mega trends across every sector, across every line of business, and across every single part of society and global culture. So these are free. I'm not going to give you free money, but I'm going to give you some free stuff. So it's almost as good, but nowhere near. So as an entrepreneur in today's world, the first thing that you actually have to remember is that there is no such thing as impossible, provided you believe in yourself. It's vitally important that if you are going to start a business, you are confident, you believe in yourself, and that you have a way to quiet those annoying little voices that keep trying to put doubt into your mind. You will find a way. And if you don't know how to find a way, then reach out to me, reach out to the community here, because we are here to support you and help you. And we might not give you money, but we might give you a lot of free advice, which might be useful. Now, one of the things that future entrepreneurs are going to actually have to go up against is the concept of AIpreneurs. So we are already starting to see artificial intelligences that are able to identify problems, create new products and services, launch them, market them on Facebook with robo-copy, as well as operate and scale their businesses fully autonomously. Some of these are called distributed autonomous organizations, but increasingly, as we look out to the next 10, 20 years, we are going to inevitably see more artificial intelligences starting their own businesses, which is a very, very weird concept. It's a sci-fi-like concept, but we already have them today operating and scaling businesses out of Hong Kong and even Wall Street, particularly in the financial services space, but also in the communications and entertainment space, etc., etc., etc. And again, a lot of conversations for later perhaps. Now, from an entrepreneur's perspective, we live in disruptive times. Now, disruption is a threat, But every threat, for example, to an incumbent, to the status quo, is an opportunity for either incumbents or for startups and entrepreneurs. So we live in times of extraordinary disruption, and it's only going to get more voracious, and it's only going to get faster. And this presents us all with a huge amount of opportunity to do new things in new ways, to build mega companies, to build decacorns, unicorns, whatever you want to call them. Now, from an industry perspective, I'm just going to show you some of these disruptions. We're disrupting the way that we make food. We can take a cell from an animal like a chicken, put it into a technology called a bioreactor and grow chicken nuggets. This is growing meat and producing meat without the need for an animal. And we can do this with any animal cell. We can also do this to create leather in this way, to create soy and whey and palm oil. We can even use it to create wood. So wood without cutting down a tree, that's odd. We also have vertical farms. Vertical farms can grow 8 times the amount of crops, especially without anywhere near as much land. So we call this jumping the S-curve, where we jump from the way that we used to do things, one technology, one status quo, to another way of doing things. And there's lots of examples of this. We have the energy industry, jumping from fossil fuels to renewables, over 1 trillion watts of renewable installed energy now. And this presents us with opportunities as entrepreneurs to build out the future in new ways, but also to disrupt the existing energy and utility companies in new ways. We have, in the financial services industry, we have crypto, NFT, Web3, we have all kinds of different things. Basically, we've got fintechs who are trying to disrupt banks. We have decentralized finance that is trying to disrupt fintechs and banks. We have open source finance in New York, where we're using homomorphic encryption and starting to split up big data models, farm them out to lots and lots of different people around the world who just want to play around with them to see if they can create better investment and trading algorithms. Then we recompile it back, and then we go and get that AI to go and buy the stock. And that produces a 64% better return than most human traders. Then we also have healthcare. We live in sci-fi-like times when we talk about healthcare. So on the one hand, we are now 3D printing human organs. That is literally sci-fi right there. We can 3D print human organs with electronics in them. So if your heart predicts that it's going to fail, your 3D printed heart predicts that it's going to fail, it'll just give itself a bump. We have in vivo gene therapies now, where someone with an inherited genetic condition can be put into a hospital bed, put onto an intravenous drip. The IV solution clips out the bad gene, clips in the new gene, and that person, as we have done a couple of times now, no longer has that inherited genetic condition. That is science fiction right there. In vivo gene editing, for real. And then, of course, basically when we have a look at the transportation or the mobility industry, everything is going autonomous, from cargo ships to aircraft, to vans, to cars, to mopeds. They're also being electrified. I was going to say electrocuted, but they're being electrified. That's a different concept there. Now, when we actually have a look at this, if I take the dashboard, if I take the steering wheel and the pedals out of a car, for example, I have the death of the car. I no longer have a car, I have a pod. Now, if I have a fully autonomous pod as an entrepreneur, that means that I could turn that empty space on wheels into a sauna, into a hotel room, into a gym, into a shop, into a GP surgery, into a bus, maybe even back into a car. That'd just be odd. That's it. And all of a sudden, I now have cashierless, autonomous shops that can travel to people. I have autonomous gyms that can travel to people's houses. People use them. We have a UV robot sanitize them, and it travels off to the next person. We live in extraordinary and unique times, full of odd and interesting opportunities, as well as more mundane opportunities as well, let's not forget. We even have, from 2025, the UK, the US and China trying to develop space-based solar power stations that beam 6 gigawatts of electricity back down to Earth, and this has already been trialled by the US military. So power stations in space, that's an opportunity for an entrepreneur. You've got to be a little bit brave on that one, to be fair, and you've got to have some cash, but hey ho, still an opportunity. So as I say, we live in science fiction-like times, and I'm only scratching the surface here. Now, it's highly likely that one of the reasons why you're actually watching this is because you might be thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own organization. Now, one of the reasons you might be thinking that is because you've decided that working for other people, frankly, sucks. And you can do better. I've been in this situation myself with Fortune 25 organizations where I've been sat at desks, where I've not been groomed to my full potential, where I've not been given a voice, where I haven't been given the opportunity to move from one type of career path or track to another. So what did I do? I quit. That's a story in itself. When you do decide to start your own organization, it's frankly scary because you go from having a regular monthly paycheck where frankly, even if you are sitting behind a desk not doing your job, you're still going to pick up a paycheck until you're made redundant or you're fired, to being cast out of that organization or coming out of that organization and suddenly being free on the one hand to make your own decisions. To live and abide by your own successes, but also fall basically on your own sword and die by your own failures without a regular paycheck. It is scary, but remember, as a community, we are here to support you. We will do whatever we can to make sure that you are successful, but it will be difficult, and you do need to work. Now, it's highly likely that you also have this dream in your head of being your own boss, being free from your oppressive boss, being able to do what you want to do, being able to take a 3-week holiday just because you want a 3-week holiday, being able to do all kinds of things basically with your family that the current employer that you're with maybe keeps saying no to. Now, we're all looking for this work-life harmony. Not many of us actually have it, especially if you're an entrepreneur, which is actually quite ironic. Now, the Japanese have a term here. They call it ikagi. I'd actually go and suggest you have a look up ikagi because it talks about having a whole life balance. It's quite a nice little framework. And actually in Japan, it's more than a framework. It's actually a philosophy. Now, if you think that working for your boss sucks, you aren't alone. Go and have a look at all of the different surveys. There's lots. I've chosen Gallup for this particular case because it was one from last year. 66% of people do not like their jobs. That's 2/3 of people do not like their jobs. Maybe you're one of them. 64% of employees aren't engaged at work. You know, if you're the kind that keeps going off having coffees and having water cooler chats and everything else because you frankly just don't like doing the job that you're actually doing, it's just you and 64% of the rest of the working population that has that feeling of dread. Now, from a productive perspective, it gets worse, both from an individual perspective and an employer perspective. Studies have again shown that the average employee is only productive for about 2 to 2.5 hours a day, which means that the rest of the day, basically, we're faffing around, by the water cooler and all kinds of other things. Because we can't really be bothered to do our jobs because, frankly, I don't like my job in the first place. We have this double-edged problem coming, you can see it. And from a global productivity perspective, despite the fact that we have powerful technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotic process automation, digitization, all these different technologies coming through, work from home, teleconferencing, teleoperations, etc., etc., etc. Global productivity, especially in developed economies, has remained fairly static and flat at about 2%. It kind of wobbles by about 0.25% here or there. But global productivity growth is just 2%. In an age that we live in, where science fiction is around every single street corner. That's just odd. But it ties all of these different figures together. And then today, 71% of CEOs basically say that employee engagement is important to the company's success. Now, let me actually take the spin off. That means that a third of CEOs out there do not think employee engagement is important. So that means that a third of companies have employees where the bosses don't think that engaging those employees is important. I mean, what? Come on. Is it a surprise, basically, that you want to leave those companies, basically become your own boss? Now, the good news is basically that when we have a look at entrepreneurship, particularly in the US and Europe and all these other sort of places, as well as the Middle East and Asia, entrepreneurship is on the rise significantly. So 81% of organizations, of small businesses in the US are run by what we call solopreneurs. Solopreneurs are individuals who don't employ any other employees. They represent 17% of the United States workforce. They represent 24 million companies. And they have been growing at a rate, in terms of compound growth, of 58% over the past decade alone. So soloprenneurship is an increasing trend. And part of the reason for this is because today it is easier than ever before for any one of us to start a business. Give me $20. I'll get you a domain name. We'll build you a website. And if you've got a phone or you've got a free social media account, you're pretty much ready to go. You can sell something. You can sell yourself. Look at virtual influencers and human influencers. That's it, putting their makeup on, all that kind of stuff. They aren't buying products necessarily to actually go and sell. They are just using the modern day tools that they have at their disposal to reach audiences who can then buy products, maybe that they are stocking on their shelves or whatever it happens to be, or can give them money or advertise with them or whatever it happens to be. The fallacy is that today, to start a business, you actually don't need much money, you don't need much resource, you don't need much skill or talent or help. It's a good thing, by the way, as well. Now, there are a couple of rules to remember. The first one is the 1 to 3.5 billion rule. As an individual, if you have an idea, if you've identified a problem to solve that's worth solving, and you've created whatever product or service that you've created, nowadays, it is easier for you to reach 3.5 billion people on Facebook and who are generally connected around the world than ever before. This is why the speed of disruption is accelerating, because as an entrepreneur, I can have an idea and I can change the world at unparalleled speed and scale. You couldn't have done this 20 to 30 years ago. Think about Greta Thunberg, sort of one of my favorite voices at the moment. If you took her back 20 to 30 years ago, basically she would be shouting in her village and not very many people would have actually heard her. However, today, all she needs is a basic device, an internet connection, and a free social media account. That's it. And that's how you start changing the world. That's all you need now to start changing the world. And you can do it faster than ever before. Now, the other rule to remember, which is a little bit ironic, is the break the rules rule. Now, most entrepreneurs will tell you this. They will tell you that the rules have been built to protect the status quo of the incumbents. And that's generally right. Think about the financial services industry with crypto, with NFTs and all this kind of stuff, with decentralized exchanges trying to get a foothold, but the regulators scratching their heads and going, you don't fit into any of the current rule books that we have. Think about Uber. Uber didn't fit into any rule book. Airbnb didn't fit into any rule book. So break the rules. Be proud about breaking the rules. Just do them in a legal way, that's it, or a way basically that you can actually make sure you don't end up in jail for, but hey-ho. So rules were typically made to favor incumbents. As startups, as disruptive entrepreneurs, break the rules. Now, let's talk about day one. So, day one has come. You need a few things. So, firstly, you need an idea. What problem have you identified? Why is it a problem? Will people pay money to solve that problem? And then, how are you going to solve that problem? It's kind of the innovator's dilemma. Go and download the codex that I mentioned at the start. It tells you exactly how to do all this. Number two, you need hustle. Because as an entrepreneur, it is highly likely that there are not going to be that many people who want to hear from you, frankly. There are generally not going to be that many people who help you because you haven't got money or a brand. You know, people will help you, but they'll help you out of the goodness of their hearts. So you need hustle. You need to hustle all the time. I'll show you some examples in a bit. You need passion, because if you are starting a company, this is going to be your baby 24/7. You are going to have to spend so much time trying to develop it. You're going to have good times. You're going to have bad times. But if you are not passionate about whatever it is that you are doing, you are going to find it very, very difficult. And passion can come in all kinds of different ways. You also need to be proud of it. So, for example, when we talk about passion, even if you start a cleaning company, you can be passionate about making people's homes clean. You can be proud that you've started a company. You can be proud that you are helping your family survive and thrive and all these kinds of things. Find wins in every place that you can. It's important. Then you need resources. And I'm going to come on to this in a little bit more depth on the next slide. But you need resources because you go from being employed as a salesperson within a technology giant to all of a sudden having to wear so many different hats that it's crazy. You are suddenly the CEO of your own organization, the director. But you are also the finance manager, the hiring manager if you're lucky enough, the marketing director. You're in charge of making the tea, cleaning the office. You are literally a jack of all trades as soon as you become an entrepreneur. You are the web developer, the web designer. You are technical support, etc., etc., etc. So you need resources, you need time, because all of this stuff takes a lot of time and effort and will. And then what about things like call to actions? As an entrepreneur, what's your call to action? You've got your problem, you've got your product. What do you want people to do? For example, and it can't really just be as straightforward as buy my product. But nevertheless, you need to have a call to action. What do you want people to do when they listen to you? Like me now. My call to action to you is to go to the 311 Institute's website and download my codexes, which are a free resource. Read them, explore them, and hopefully they will be useful to you. That's my call to action, for example. Differentiators. Now, we often get told by banks, like shows like The Apprentice, as well as VCs and all other manner of people, they say that you need differentiators. Now, you can find differentiators absolutely everywhere. But let's face it, you are not necessarily going to be highly differentiated against your competition because almost everything is commoditized now. If you are selling computer servers, you will tell me that your differentiation could be, for example, the partnerships that you have, the clients that you have, the testimonials that they give you, the quality of your technical support, the way that you sell those products commercially. You might even tell me that your differentiator is your customer service. And if I go to your competitors, they will tell me exactly the same thing. Your delivery times, your credit lines, whatever it happens to be. So you are your best differentiator, but differentiators come across the entire stack, not just from one particular place. You can't have a great differentiator in customer service, but take 5 years to ship your products. It's got to be a balanced offering. Now, mental health. A lot of entrepreneurs do not talk about their mental health, and they actually should. It is difficult to be an entrepreneur. Everything is on your shoulders. So as a community, we are here to support you. If you are worried about your mental health, talk to people, reach out, have a conversation. If you really need help, there are people who will help. So reach out to us, for example. If you do not get your mental health in check, you will suffer, your company will suffer, and you will end up basically in the gutter. And not in a good way. Not that would ever happen in a good way. Liability. What's your liability exposure? Sometimes it's quite difficult to get liability protection. For example, use my Ian the chicken example where we take the cell from a chicken, put it into a bioreactor, grow a chicken nugget. How do you figure out the liability of that? Even the regulators in some of these new industries don't know how to actually address the liability. Money. This is a myth. You do not need money to start or run a business at all. Now, it helps. What you need is you need resources. It's a very, very different problem. If I want to build an app, I can either go and try and get $250,000 of seed money to build my app. But if I can't get money, then I need to try to find another way to secure my resource. Now, maybe I can find people in India who are happy to develop my product for me with some of their free time in exchange for something. So when we talk about money, you don't necessarily need money, but what you need is you need a creative way to get the resources that you need to build, operate, and scale your business. It's a different mindset. It's a different problem to have. Plans. Do you need plans? Everyone will tell you you should have business plans. But your business plan can literally be a couple of bullet points and everything else. And the reason for that is because as an entrepreneur, you are going to find out very quickly that you are the ball in a pinball machine. Because you think that your market is there and you're going to sell your product to that market, that demographic there, that audience. However, when you go and sell it to them, they say, it's really good that you found a problem that you thought that we cared about you solving with your product, but actually it's not as much of a problem for us as you thought, or we have no money, or whatever it happens to be. We don't like you, we don't like your products. So as a result, you kind of pivot, you go over here. And when you go over here, you might find that this is actually now your audience. And they go, well, we kind of like that, but you need to modify it a little bit. And if you modify it a little bit, we'll actually buy more. So turn your beta testers. If you are building a product or new service, get some beta testers on board, get them to test it, tell them what they think of it, tear it down, develop it with them. They become your customers. They become your first actual paying customers. That's what we see basically across a lot of the US. But do you need plans? Plans basically are just something to be torn up and shredded on day 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And skill, you will find basically that you are the jack of all trades. You are the thing basically that when you worked for somebody else, you were a clear-cut T-shaped individual. You had deep expertise in one thing. As an entrepreneur, generally you need deep-ish expertise in everything from technical support to marketing, to insurance, to accounts, to PCI compliance, to all kinds of other things that frankly you probably don't even want to know about, but as part of running a business, you need to know about them, you need to be on top of them. Now, some of the things that I look for basically in my life basically is I actually look for interesting people, mentors, which is why I mentor people myself, and interesting quotes. Now, this has sort of been one of my guiding quotes basically for quite a long time now. So, Sir Richard, if you're listening, give me a shout out, give me some money. Can I have a flight on your plane? I said, I'd love a flight on a plane. Always hustle, remember. He probably won't. But anyway, so Richard Branson basically is actually quite famous for living his life basically along this kind of rule. So he says, if someone offers you an opportunity, say yes and figure it out as you go. Now, on the one hand, this really pushes you outside your comfort zone. Secondly, it will actually surprise you, and you will surprise yourself at just how much you can learn when you are forced to learn how to do whatever it is basically that you're being forced to do. And it's a very good entrepreneur skill to have. It's also, certainly from my perspective, led me to have some very interesting conversations with very interesting people about very interesting things and get involved in some very interesting things, such as building the future of the Middle East, etc., that I originally thought that I couldn't do. So this single quote, I would suggest using it as one of your North Stars because it will push you in ways that you didn't believe were possible. Now, what about day two? We've sort of talked about day one. What about day two? So this is where I'm going to turn basically to one of my other mentors. I've used his company pretty much every day for the past number of years, especially during lockdown. He's a firm favourite of me. He's got to be a firm favourite of you. Let's go and have a little chat with...
Very important question.
Jeff.
What does
I did ask a question.
day two look like?
I asked that question, didn't I? I did ask that question.
What does day two look like?
He's thinking.
I know the answer to this.
That's good. I was worried there.
Day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that is why it is always day one.
Well done, Jeff.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Now, of course, Jeff is famous for planning for the long term and executing against the long-term vision. Same with Larry Fink, Jamie Dimon, etc., which is another trend that we sort of see. While you are managing your day-to-day business, while you are fighting fires, basically on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday basis, always keep your long-term vision in mind. That's your other North Star. And now we've done that, you've got to focus. You've got your problem to solve. You're creating your products and services. You have a good idea who your audience is. You've got to focus. And then, of course, you've got to kiss. You've got to keep it simple, stupid, because you do not want to overcomplicate your already complicated life. Try and find as many different ways as you can to simplify everything that you do. And then, of course, you've just got to start. Because if you are unhappy with your current employer, if you are unhappy with your job, if you are unhappy with your situation and maybe your life, it is down to you to start. By starting, you change something. Put one foot in front of the other and you'll suddenly find that you are traveling in a new direction. And if it's of your own making, it is going to be difficult. We are here to support you. But while it is difficult, as and when you become a success, where success is measured by you, success means different things to different people. Once you have become successful, it will then be down to the first step that you took. So starting is the most important step that you will ever take. And of course, remember, as you start scaling your startup, as you become a unicorn, as you become a decacorn, firstly, give me a shout out. That's it, because I'll probably still need some money and some resource. Don't give me this free advice rubbish, basically, that all the other entrepreneurs keep telling me about. So be kind to your employees, because you do not want your employees to go, I don't like working for this jerk. That's it. So keep your employees front and center, as employees and employers should already be doing anyway. And then just remember, go to my website, www.311institute.com. You can buy some cookies, buy a mug, I don't know why, buy my merch. That's it. I'm a modern 21st century entrepreneur. Buy my merch. And then visit my YouTube channel and click subscribe and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why, it just seems like what we should be doing today. Get the message out there. And that's it from me. So I hope you enjoyed the little presentation. I hope it gave you some ideas about the future of entrepreneurship. I hope it motivated you to actually put that first foot in front of the other and actually start your own journey to entrepreneurship and everything else. Let me know how it all goes. And of course, thank you to Stelios and the team, as always, and I will see you again in the near future. Take care. Goodbye.